Hello guys, Mike from the WCA. We're going to take a look at the game of the century between Ben and Augie. These guys had one of those games where you don't know who is going to make the last mistake. It does happen. It even happens at the Grandmaster level. You see these cats just trade one mistake after another. It happened last Saturday at Columbus between these players at in the championship section. Let's take a look at what happened. So Ben has the white pieces, Augie has black, and the game begins with e4, c5, and they're going to get right into a mainline Sicilian. So knight f3, Ben wants to play d4, so d6, d4. So you guys are all familiar with this stuff. Let's just move right along through the opening. Knight f6, knight c3, and as soon as black plays g6, they're signaling that they want to fianchetto their bishop, and that usually indicates a dragon setup. Okay, so Ben plays a funny move, bishop to e2. It's not funny if you're going to castle short. As a matter of fact, it's called the classical variation. So white is not going to push, fly these pawns up the board and try to mate black that way. They play more positionally. And Augie continues with bishop to g7. Now, with the bishop on e2, let's take a look at the game here, and then I'll show you what I meant by that classical variation. So bishop e3, castle's long. And here in the game, Ben played queen d2, which is kind of a mix of the classical system, as you'll see in a moment, I'll show you, and the Yugoslav attack, where white puts pawns on e4 and f3, and then plays the usual, h4, g4, and push on the king side. So back here, instead of queen d2, if Ben castles, you have the classical dragon position. Now, with the king castled short, say knight c6, knight b3. Now, why knight b3? Just to chat for a couple of... the basic reason is white has more space than black. So by stepping out of that trade possibility, you leave black with the four minor pieces only playing on 3 ranks, and sometimes these pieces can step on each other's toes. It's like there's 4 of them now, and they don't have as many squares to go. And another reason to move the knight off this line is you have to be very aware of tactics on this diagonal. This knight can hop to g4 sometimes, and this knight can be hit twice. There's all sorts of tricks that come up, but one of the main reasons, again, is because white has more space, they're avoiding the trade. So they're going to hop back to b3, and then this is one of the times where black may put a bishop on e6, blocking a center pawn, but black is okay with the bishop there for now, and then white very often continues with f4, which is one of the ways to attack in the Sicilian, aside from the usual stuff, making a battery, coming after the fianchettoed bishop. Okay, so let's take a look at the game. So Ben plays queen d2. That's here, okay, guys? So it's his turn, queen d2, and by doing that, he removes one of the pieces that was controlling the g4 square, and Augie goes right for the dark squared bishop. So regardless of how close these guys are following theory, you should all at least know why black is interested in hunting down the dark squared bishop, because he knows, Ben is going to try to use it to attack his king's position. So Ben takes it, the bishop on c8 takes, and then gets kicked with f3. The bishop drops down to d7. Now here, this has been played before, and the more common way to play is to immediately castle, and you get knight c6, for instance, and it's not so easy for white. If you go for that standard attack, you have to meet the move knight e5, and the whole purpose of that move is the knight's coming to c4, and the only way to keep it out of c4 would be to play a move like b3, which is not usually recommended, and I hope you guys can see why. You're weakening a piece. If you play b3, let me take that back. Let me actually put b3 on the board. If you play b3, you're not lost with white yet, but think about what you just did. You weakened a piece that's sitting on a half-open file and on the longest dark square diagonal on the board. you're really asking for trouble playing this way. Although, again, if you put this move on a computer, the computer is not going to say that white is lost. But as a human, to play b3 is a little, can make you a little uncomfortable. So if you continued with your attack on the h file, then knight c4 gets played, hitting the queen and the bishop, and you have to move your queen, keep your bishop protected. A black might swap that piece off, and this is a very, very different position than what you normally get. Without your dark squared bishop as white, it's not easy to get rid of this piece, and this piece is very, very powerful. Let me just show you one idea that comes up a lot that's a mistake. Say at the 1200 level, a move like rook c8, good idea. If you're white, try to avoid moves like h6, which look, it's really tempting. Like, how do I not play this move? I get to attack the bishop with tempo, but the bishop can tuck itself in on h8, and it kind of does the same exact thing it was doing on g7 from h8, and your own pawn on h6 acts like a shield for you. So, if I put this on, you can see the dark squared bishop has all its power, and this pawn is actually slowing down white's attack. Okay, so let's go back to the game. So after f3, Augie retreats his bishop. Ben goes right away for bishop h6 without castling. It's okay, but after this move here, castling is too late because there is a tactical threat that these players missed. I'm going to count here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 times in a row. They missed a chance to execute this trade. So one player missed it, the other player forgot to do it, and then they just kept going back and forth. To their credit, the moves that they played were thematic. They fit the position on the board, but again, because neither one of them was aware of this tactic. And if you are a Sicilian player, especially a dragon player, you should become very familiar with this tactic. Really, anytime there's a fianchettoed position where one side is trying to get rid of that bishop with their own. Okay, so let me show you what Ben did. Here, he castles his king, and that's a mistake. And if you need to pause your video to figure out why, you can. But the mistake here is he missed bishop takes d4. And if you do that, you may take the rook up in the corner, but after, say, the queen takes back, black has 2 minor pieces for the rook, and those minor pieces are really strong, especially this dark square bishop, which now is going to just rule this long diagonal forever. And your attack against the black king is really, really hard to crash through. So that's a big advantage for black. But black missed it. So after Ben castled, to Augie's credit, he played a6. His idea is to start a pawn storm here. So, we gave these guys credit for playing the ideas out, but they're playing the ideas on the wings. So here Ben played h4, which is the third mistake, because again, he's allowing bishop takes d4. But why did we give him credit? Because he's playing on the wing, trying to attack the castled king, and so is black. So as you can see, in the middle of the board is a tactic that each player is missing while they're each playing on the wing. So it's kind of this cool scenario going on. And then Ben plays h5, missing the tactic again, and then Augie plays here pawn to b4. Now, pawn to b4 is a mistake, giving white a huge advantage that Ben didn't take advantage of. In the game, Ben played knight to d5, but this is real important that you guys stop the video here and see if you can find an improvement, other than playing knight d5. Now, the reason he didn't play it is he may not be familiar with this idea. And, these guys are in the 1200 range, so, we're not on them so much for missing stuff. We all miss stuff in games. But once you see these tactical ideas, you really have to make it your business to understand them and execute them when you see them in your games. So look at all the forcing moves. For example, if you take the bishop on g7, black really can't take the knight. it looks like taking the knight is such a great in-between move, because you have, you're hitting the queen, and then you're going to pick up this bishop at some point, but you're really not, because after queen h6, black is in trouble. You can take a pawn, but again, after king b1, we have this like shield where the other team's pawn is guarding your king. And take a look at this part of the board, and you're going to realize that after moves like pawn takes, or, I don't know, I guess black can try to play g5 maybe to avoid getting mated, but this rook could hang with pressure, and it's really, really bad for black. So, after the move knight d5, Ben missed a chance there. So here again, it looks like black can still play this move, bishop takes knight, and he missed it. To his credit, once again, it's like such an amazing game. So, like, I wanted to get so mad at these guys for missing these tactics, but I couldn't go all out because the moves they were playing, I know in their minds made sense. But I think this was the best indication, or the best inspiration for these guys to really study tactics. Okay, so queen a5, what is the idea? Clearly to put pressure on this pawn here. You've got some pressure on these lines here, but it becomes white's turn, and what he missed was, with these two beautiful knights in the middle of the board, there are just wide open tactics here. So knight takes e7 would work, except for the knight here, which Ben eliminates. Augie takes, and now here black is in big trouble. Knight takes e7 check, king h8 is forced. In the game, Ben played knight takes c6, which gives him a huge advantage. However, go back. Force yourself in positions like this. Never to take a piece away from an enemy king that's being attacked by 4 pieces. Now, where am I getting the number 4 from? I'm including this rook on h1. So I'm almost going to say 4.5 pieces, because if this rook, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. If this rook ever moves on this file, let's say it moves with check. Do you see how this rook can immediately replace it? Now, you might argue and say, well, that rook, there's something in the way. Not really, because that pawn is going to move with the capture, and that capture is going to be near the enemy king. So this rook, the bishop on h6, clearly the queen, even the pawn, the knight, all of these pieces are kind of swarming around the black king. That should be your focus. When you have a count of 4 or 5 pieces that can get to one zone, before you take something on the other side, look to see what you can do over here. Okay, can we blame him? No, look, it's a free bishop that attacks the queen. That's the move that was played in the game, and again, we can understand why. But let's go back. What can we do here? Well, you can just take the pawn on g6, and here black is getting crushed. You cannot take on a2 because of well, lots of things. I don't know. You can play around with this position, and I would recommend you put it up on a chessboard. I like just bishop takes g7 here, and the only move is king takes, and then simply queen d4. And I'm not sure you're escaping mate. You're getting mated here, right? So pawn f6, I think, is the only move, and then I think that's checkmate, isn't it? Yeah, look at that. Beautiful coordination. The rook hits the king, protects, well, the knight doesn't need protection, but hey, it's protected anyway. The knight protects the pawn, and the queen delivered the second to last check, and it's all over. What's important is that you don't just watch the video and walk away saying, oh, I saw a cool game between Ben and Augie. No. The critical moments of the game, you have to go back and make sure you fully understand. So here it is again. Ben takes something on e7 with a check here, right? Grabs the pawn with a check, king h8, only move. The enemy king literally has no moves at this point. You have 1, 2, 3, 4.5 pieces pointing in the zone of the king. Next time that happens to you in one of your games, before you do anything else, use the time to calculate. Now, if you have a minute on your clock and you see a free bishop hanging here, you're probably going to take it and nobody is going to fault you for it. But in the future, when you have time, don't, go for these trades, but make sure you calculate the other stuff first. All right, so he took the knight, the bishop. Augie takes on a2, and Ben is still winning. Taking the bishop here up on g7 will leave him a piece up, and just a wonderful position. King takes on g7. I don't know, the black king is in big trouble here. You just have to not hang mate. There's checkmate on that square. So, you can try a lot of things. Probably just grab this pawn on b4, and black has one check, and black is down a piece, and his king is open and about to be opened up some more. So that would certainly be winning. But after queen takes a2, Ben takes on d6, forgetting about his bishop here on h6, which gets taken. And we were kind of fooling around in class at one point saying, thank goodness Ben had this f pawn. And this pawn became the hero in Ben's position. It saved him from getting checkmated, because that would have been a big issue here. So, sorry, that did not happen. Go back, mister. It won't go back. Okay, so I'm sorry. Bishop here. How's that? There we go. I'm sorry about those technical difficulties. Bishop. Sorry, this is not my strong suit. Bishop takes on h6. Thank goodness for the f-pawn, right? Okay. For some reason, Augie decides to bring the bishop back to g7 to take this pawn here, and that was clearly a mistake. He could have won the pawn by checking. Just give a check on a1, keep the bishop here on this line, and when the king moves, you can take that with your queen, and you can see your queen can cover this diagonal if it needs to. And I highlighted the c3 square, which is a checking square in case you need it. And white has to be careful here. They still may be better. I don't even know at this level. There's chances for both sides, obviously, right? But Augie retreats the bishop, trying to win the pawn now, and then Ben plays queen takes b4. Now, a move like e5 for Ben would really shut the dark square bishop out, and this is starting to look gloomy again for black. But Ben takes the pawn on b4 with his queen, and Augie decides to move the bishop back to h6, and we were saying he really wants this f-pawn. Now, you can't blame him. If he takes the f-pawn, that check is not going to be very pleasant to get out of. However, Ben finds a pretty cool idea with e5, and that defends the pawn this way. You see the queen is guarding the pawn. Augie kicks the queen, and Ben defends. And then rook a6. And rook a6 is kind of lights out for black here. Can you see the winning idea for white? And that would simply be just take the pawn here and open up the h-file. And black is going to be, you come here, you're just going to get checked, and king g8, pretty cool checkmate. You see it? Knight e7, really cool. So rook a6 was losing, and then Ben plays knight e7. Doesn't see it, but it's still a good move. He's got a really good advantage here, and these guys start going back and forth. Augie brings his bishop back to g7, so he's kind of ice skating between h6 and g7, and then h6 traps the bishop. He gives up his bishop on e5, queen takes, and here black is in big trouble, and then pawn f6 to block the check. And I think Ben forgot about the rook here on a6 because he's completely winning here. A move like queen c7, he's threatening knight takes check followed by queen mate, but he actually took the pawn on f6. His thinking was if this rook takes here this way, then he would have a forced back rank checkmate. But fortunately for Augie, he's got another rook over here on a6, and now white is completely lost. So Ben tries to make an early run for it with his king. Rook to d6, check, king c3, and rook e6 going after the knight. Maybe trading a pair of rooks off would have been a better idea. Rook protects, and the only move that could lose for black was rook takes f4. I guess he really wanted Ben's f pawn, and then he actually got mated on the back rank. All right, I'm showing it to you again because we all go through it. We all have a game like this in our history. If you don't, it's coming. Trust me, we all have games that we want to forget, but I hope it's a lesson to all of you just how important it is to study the tactics. All right, Grandmasters.